As we know, for St Ignatius Loyola, doing the will of God was so very important. Discerning the will of God was the object of his work in the spiritual exercises. And when he found what he thought was the will of God, he was absolutely obstinate in following that. They tell the story about how he had determined that it was important for him to go visit somebody and to leave the city of Rome for a short period of time. And on the morning that he had determined that he was supposed to go, it was raining cats and dogs. It didn't stop him. It didn't detour him. He decided to go anyway. Another person would have said, well, maybe God's will is being shown to us in the rain, but not St. Ignatius. He had discerned it and he was going to follow it. And that sort of almost ruthless, if you want, a demand to follow God's will is something that can really be helpful to us, because sometimes we get caught in a situation where we think there are two things that we should do, and because we choose one of them, we end up thinking that we perhaps haven't done the thing that we should be doing. And for St. Ignatius, that didn't make any sense. And there's a story in my life that really illustrated this. For a while, I was working in the jails. At the same time, I was helping out in a parish. And what would happen is I would have a whole stack of inmate requests for me to go visit them in the jail. And I would put them, together and decide I would go at a certain time on a certain day. And often enough, I would get a call from a hospital in the parish that would say someone is dying and you need to go see this person. And so I wouldn't be able to go see the inmates. And I felt bad about this dilemma. And so I took that to my spiritual director and I said, look, I feel frustrated because, I'm kind of betraying the inmates who want to see me because I have to go see this person who is dying, and it just doesn't seem fair, And so he led me through a kind of a discernment, and he said, well, what's the most important thing? Are the inmates going to be there? And I said, well, some of them will and some of them won't. And he said, will this other person be there if you don't go to anoint him or her? And I said, no, because they're dying, And he said, so what is it that God would want you to do? And I'd say, well, go see the person who's dying. And he said, yeah, and forget the other. When you have time, do the other. But forget that that is something that you want to do, because the only thing you ought to want to do is the will of God. And you've determined that God is calling you to the hospital. Go there, and go there in peace. So that's the wisdom of St. Ignatius I have for you today, is that sort of discernment that can kind of cut through the way that we play games in our minds, thinking somehow that if we feel bad about one thing we're not doing when we're doing what we've determined is the will of God, that somehow we're doing something nobler by feeling bad about the second thing. No, the only thing is to do the will of God, and to do that peacefully. And if God wants us to do the other thing, then God will have to make the time, and we'll have to listen and discern that we're called to do that when the time comes. Wisdom of St. Ignatius for today.